Okay, so let's look at how to get the most out of the title box category of TitleMations. I'll select each of these and press Q to connect them to the playhead location in the project. And here we are. And just quickly, what's the difference between these? Well, the first one draws the box on and animates the title on. The second one, coming up here, has an inset title at the top that can also be a graphic, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. The third one includes a subtitle that also has a background associated with it. The fourth one, called Fade, is a very simple title, but is great for putting a lot of text in if you have a lot of text you want to add in. The next one, called Scale, scales the box up. And the final one scales the box up, but also types the text on. And each of these can be modified quite a bit to look different than they are. So some things they all have in common, and we're going back to the first one here, draw on, is two controls, two on-screen controls. The top one moves the entire title, and you can move it anywhere on the screen. The bottom one changes the shape of the box around the title depending on how much text you have. So for example, if I change it to say welcome, I may want to change that box size to be a little bit smaller. So you have full flexibility on that box, and it should still work just fine. Okay, in the title inspector, then we can choose whether this animation goes both on and off. And by the way, I frequently turn off the animate off because I'm just cutting to the next shot. So I frequently turn that off. You can change the text directly here without needing to go to the title inspector. And we have dividers that make it easy to see the different sections here. So these are the text parameters. Enter the text, change the font size and color. The animation parameters. So right now it animates by character. So each character you can see coming in here. And center to end. So let's change this to forwards and keep the spread. In fact, if I drop the spread down to 0, we'll get more of a type-on effect similar to the type-on. And I'll increase that spread a little bit. If I have more to LA, if I add more letters in there, then we can change the animate in by word, and then each word will come in. And it's fairly quick to come in. And then we can change the direction, forwards or backwards. And animate out has the same idea. You can choose how it animates out by character or word, the spread of the animation, in other words, how many are animating at the same time, and the direction. For the box, the draw speed, I can change that. Let's do a medium speed. And we can choose how quickly it fades in or out. The box size is best to change in the viewer. Make the box rounder if we want a more round look like that. And then we can change the outline color and choose to add some fill to it as well if we want to. Give it a little fade there. And then the underlying video is blurred by default. You can turn that off so it doesn't blur it, but frequently it looks good with the opening title to have that blurred. And it's blurred over time. In other words, you start out in the first frame, it's not blurred. It becomes blurred as the title comes on. And then as the title animates off, it will go back to not being blurred anymore. And you can choose how much it's blurred by the blur amount right here. You can add a shadow like before, pretty self-explanatory. And then there's some mask parameters that you usually won't need to deal with that will offset the mask. And that's only if you are making things really tight. You may want to play with those mask parameters, but usually you will not have to adjust these in any way. And then tracking right now, when the text comes in, it tracks. In other words, you can see it starts wide and gets a little smaller and comes into its default tracking. If you want to change that, for instance, you could set that to 0 and it will not track at all. And then we can choose whether or not it tracks off. So let's have it track off quite a bit more. And then when it goes out, it should spread out as it goes out. And that's pretty much it. Let's look at the next one, draw with inset, because this has a few other parameters. Everything else is pretty much the same, but we've got this inset option here where you can put any text here, like today, or type, obviously anything you want up there. And it will be cut out from the animated line around it. By the way, here, if we move the whole thing, it looks like we end up with a line again, but if we just click in the timeline, that'll go away. So it's easy to reposition this, and you just need to update. And that's true with several of these titles. So animate on and off, text parameters, just like before, drop zone parameters. So rather than have this be text, it can be a drop zone. So what I'll do is say, use drop zone for inset by hitting the checkbox there. Let's go to the library here where I've got a little baseball, and let's go back to the inspector, and I'll click on the drop zone well and select that baseball and click apply clip. And now we've got a little baseball in there instead of some text. So the idea is you can put your logo in there. So if I scroll down, there's scale. We can scale that up or down. And then if you want these lines to get closer, what determines where those lines are the text field, which is still there. You just can't see it. So if I delete all the text, the lines go fully underneath. But now if I add, for instance, I'm just going to hit the 0 key a few times. We've now made those bars come in closer to our object when they draw on right there, right about like that. So very easy to add an object in there instead of some text. That's the main difference with the inset view. And let's see, drop zone, animation parameters, box speed. The rest of this is pretty much the same as we saw in the first instance. The third one has a nice subtitle with a background, and that's the main difference. All the same ideas about the two on-screen controls apply for moving things around. And again, you just need to click to update. So the subtitle, you can choose whether or not it has that background, and you can choose how much padding that it has. And the rest of the parameters are pretty much the same that we've already seen before. Now I mentioned with fade, and this is true with any of these, you can put as much text on these as you want. So I'll copy this and put on some more, just because you can add as much text as you want of any size. So this is great for even if you've got a lot of descriptive text you need to bring on. This is a nice way to do it. And I frequently find most of my titles I want to be pretty darn simple. So back in the title inspector here, for the animate on parameters, instead of word, I might say line or just all, and have everything animate on at the same time. And it's a simple title box that animates on and off. With scale, the only difference is that the box scales up. We can adjust its roundness and other parameters just like we could before. And then scale and type, we have this type on effect that you can adjust in the animation parameters. So by character or by word. If we do word instead, for example, each word will type on. So a couple quick tips on how to get the most out of the title box theme of titles for TitleMations.